Val is calling from Canada, and Val says, I prayed and it was weird. All right. Tell us more.
Oh, man, it was weird, bro.
Yeah.
So, kind of my name is Val. I'm an ex-Catholic to kind of start off with that. And I recently had a wedding on Friday the 13th. It was Ren Fair themed. It was great. It was beautiful. With the exception, there is thus stress that comes with the wedding, right?
You reminded me of something, Val.
Stressors.
Go on. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a couple extra stressors. I live in the Pacific Northwest, so there was always the chance of rain for an outdoor wedding.
There's always the chance of an alt-right person showing up at the wedding.
My brother did not show up, so there's that. But also, I ended up having one of my bridesmaids. She ended up in the hospital the day before for an emergency.
Wait, this was your wedding?
Yeah, my wedding.
Hey, congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. And so there was just that moment of I was in my bathroom, and not so much that I was worried of her not coming to the wedding and being there. I was legitimately worried for her.
You're worried for your friend. Yeah.
And I had this moment, and I was just brushing my teeth, and I was like, oh man, please God, let all of this be fine. And I stopped myself, and I was like, no. We're not, if we're going to do this, we're not giving it to God. We can't do this.
Yeah.
But there was still this need, this sort of I needed to get that stress and that energy out, I guess in the form of ritual, which it's what prayer is. It's ritual, right? And so I was like, all right, so what are we doing? What ritual we're doing? And I got married on a Friday. And for those who know, that is Freya's Day. That's what it's named after. And I was like, cool, we'll do this in the name of the Norse goddess Freya, because at least it's not to God. And it was weird. And and everything went fine. The surgery went fine. My bridesmaid showed up with an IV in her arm, and I told her she didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It did rain, but after the vows. So
wow.
Should have prayed to Thor.
It was just
I'm originally from the Pacific Northwest as well. It's very bold of you to have an October wedding outside. So well done. It's incredible. It's like if there was fate or God, you almost tempted it to, mess with you, and it still came out correctly. I think of prayer in those situations. It can be so automatic if you come from a religious background, and I'm always hesitant to tell religious people about experiences like this because I just know some of them would want to jump on and be like, oh, well, that's because you still secretly believe. But I look at it like journaling. You're putting it out there. You're like, I'm stressed. It's a way to make your stress outside of your body. We all know that's good for us. That's what journaling is. That's what a lot of meditation is. And so, it's weird in that moment, but I look at it and I'm like, yeah, you needed a release. It was a really healthy release. It's like a verbal journaling. I love that you dedicated it to Freya instead. That's amazing.
We're always very pro-release here at the ACA. But
that's good to know.
Yeah, you've got my blessing. But
your blessing.
Yeah, well, if you needed it, I don't think you did. But I have a friend who is a very prominent atheist who does tarot cards, not because they believe that it's hocusy pocusy and that there's ghoulies that are getting into that cardboard, but because it allows them to think through their issue. I like to go to the gym and work out when I get frustrated. I take my dog for a walk, but then he usually frustrates me because he's a little bobo. But some kind of meditation too. I've done that too, but I think the fastest way for me is to go for a run. But if you're preparing for your wedding, I doubt you have a chance to get all sweaty and gross. But I as long as you're recognizing, I think not that you're asking permission in any way, but as long as you're recognizing this is a ritual, right? And you are sort of getting in touch with the various aspects, trying to externalize with the knowledge that you're not, whatever. You're going through a process to clarify and calm the mind and do something. That's probably why this meme of ceremony became such a successful one, is because it just works. Doesn't have to be anything out there for it to work.
And I think we as humans, we like knowing what to expect. My husband and I play the what to expect game, which is just if you're going into a situation, like what will happen, who will be there. It's just comforting to do that. So I feel like ritual is it's comforting to have rituals. And I actually like tarot cards too, because they're like a good little therapy session if you're, talking about what's going on with you. How do you feel about it now? Like in looking back, you say it was weird. What's your take now? A couple weeks on. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple weeks in, I look back at it and kind of in that same vein of this was ritual that I did on instinct. And like I said, I went and it was like manifesting. It's like, I'm just getting this energy out away out of my body and into the air. It's no longer physically there. Like now I can concentrate on the things that I need to concentrate on. Right. And I feel weird about it, but I don't feel bad about it. Like I'm not suddenly a Norse pagan.
Right.
I like to role play as a pagan. I like to role play as a pagan sometimes, just because it makes life a little bit more interesting.
That's very Northwest of you.
A lot of dungeons. Yeah. Well, I'm not from here. I'm from Louisiana, and I'm up here because I decided to fall in love with a Canadian. So I
French Canadian
from swamp to. Huh?
A French Canadian?
This my spouse, he's Canadian.
A French Canadian?
No, he's not a French Canadian.
Okay.
I'm an actual Cajun person, so technically I'm already French Canadian. But yeah, it was it was still weird. I don't know if I'm gonna make habit of it, if that makes sense. I have been one of the things, I think, Johnny, the friend that you're talking about, I know who you're talking about. And
you do.
They were sort of an inspiration for me to sort of pursue atheopaganism as a way to, one, also kind of decolonize myself. Because it's like, oh, hey, what were my ancestors before Rome came to Europe and decided to, what were their traditions? Little silly things like I don't call it Christmas. I say Happy Yule kind of thing. But yeah, I feel weird about it, but I don't feel bad about it. It's still, I'm processing it, and y'all are now part of the process. And
love that.
Yeah. Well, let me say this.
Help.
One of the concerns I had about not so much about my friend, but about those who advocate for those kind of things, is that magical thinking can creep in. And the idea of sort of setting up a kind of ritual space, ceremonial space to externalize these thoughts, these feelings, to visualize them getting out of you and getting out into someplace else. I think that's great. But I think that the temptation is that the brain's always on the brink of turning that into actual magic with spells. And so I would caution you to, what do I know, right? To just be aware of a human being's tendencies to start seeing connections between things. Recognize that the fact that you're doing it without believing that Freya and, Balder the Brave and, Heimdall and all those cats may or may not exist. It's not really important. It's that you're doing it with that as the sort of what's the word I'm looking for? The framework. And that's it. I don't have a problem. There's other atheists that would have a problem with it. And I can see their argument too.
Fundamentalist atheists.
Yeah. I can see that position too.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely can see I think with hypnosis, that's always my trigger to wonder about magical thinking, just because I do think it can be so easy to start getting into that. But yeah, I agree. I love that you're processing. I love that you're so aware of it. I love that you called and were like, all right, we're going to process together. that makes me feel so special and wonderful. I live for this shit.
So you made me think about a wedding that I went to, not this last weekend, but the weekend before I came to town.
It was the same weekend that I got married, the Friday the 13th wedding.
Yeah, it was Friday the 13th. Was it the same day as the eclipse?
Yeah, the day before.
Day before, okay. And this is a Saturday. And a friend of mine got married to somebody I didn't know, and I get there, and it was Jesus this, and the Lord that. And you can't have a marriage without Christ as the center of your marriage. And I want everyone to bow our heads. And so I was like, oh, shit. And so I was sitting there, and when you're at it, and it's me, like me, not on the show me, like that lives in the world me. And so, and there's people there who know that me is also Johnny Angel. And so at the little thing, and so they're like, bow our heads and bring the spirit of the, Christ. And so, of course, what does every atheist do when that happens? They look up and they start looking around. And a full 1/10 of the crowd was looking around, like, I get it. You got a little sugar in your tank there. It's like, yeah, and so we all talked about it afterwards. Like, what the hell was this? When did Joey get all religious? Is that what his wife is like? Oh no! Turns out, Momzilla. Momzilla insisted on that kind of thing, and on top of it, turns out I looked up the minister.
Uh-oh.
I'm not going to say his name, but he studied directly under one of those big names, one of those like national level fundamentalist megachurch MFs who, talk about the guys with the hands out. And I was like, what the heck happened? And I find out that my friend and his wife were like, 5 minutes, Mom. We're limiting it to 5 minutes. But
is that what happened?
Pastor gave a full, I would say, 5 minutes of Jesus, Lord, Christ, like if you added all the words up 5 minutes. So, yeah, that was uncomfortable.
The kind of Jesus that you really don't want in your marriage. It makes everything terribly unexciting and unsexy.
He's watching. You can't see his hands, Like, what is Jesus doing?
You're giving me the heebie-jeebies. I know it's Halloween, but
yeah.
I do have one related, very quick wedding story.
And sometimes at night you can hear Jesus moaning.
Okay. I don't have to palate cleanse with that, but go ahead, Sophie.
Oh, no, just like I was thinking there was this one person I knew who was getting married and they were doing the candle thing where you pour sand into a candle.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And my friend was a bridesmaid and her sister was so angry that she forgot to get a Jesus layer for their sand candle. So the marriage is ruined, doomed, done.
May you have many long years of pleasant marriage with your partner. And anything else you want to say before we cut you loose?
Yeah, Val? So we definitely wanted to get the Christian woo out of it. So just as a little tidbit, we didn't do a bouquet or a garter toss because that's fucking weird, like garter toss.
It is weird.
Instead, because it was on Friday and Freya is the goddess of cats, we threw a stuffed Pusheen to see who was going to get a cat next.
I was really worried you were going to say you threw a cat, but I knew that anyway.
Well, it was funny because I was like, let's find the kitten to throw. And everyone's like, what? Are you really going to throw a kitten?
Don't do it. Yeah.
We had a great time
cool.
without the woo. I'll put it to you that way.
Oh, my goodness. Do you mean to tell me that you can have a good wedding and potentially a happy marriage without Jesus H. Christ watching every single move you do?
I really hope he didn't watch what we were doing that night, but
Oh, well, congratulations!
He was friends with some pretty shady characters. I'm sure he's seen a lot. So
I know, that's true.
All right.
Probably, yeah. We're tax collectors anyway.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much for calling, Val. Take care and call back and tell us how your many years of happy marriage has turned out.